Mr. Chair, you have a quorum, and Chair Crawley asked me to call roll. So we will call roll with the meeting beginning at 5:33 p.m. So Marcus Crawley.
I'm here.
Jeff Canberra.
Here.
Yusef Herbert.
Here.
Andrea Dawson.
Here.
Benjamin Scott. Here. Jill Broadhurst.
Here.
Right. We have 100% attendance and a quorum in person, so
Well,
all good to go.
Maybe not. We are aware of our new duties of SB 2449, AB 2449, and the Brown Act, right? And the just cause attendance, correct requirement? Yes?
Yep.
Okay. Now, Yusef is not video, so he has to be video and audio, and he has to have submitted his just cause location that is entered into the agenda. So we have all of those shortcomings there with Yusef Herbert. So in my opinion, he can attend as a public person. He is not here as a qualified committee member.
I'm a bit confused. I wasn't aware of the just cause stipulation, or even that was necessary to attend this next meeting. And when you had called me, Marcus, I wasn't aware that that was a requirement for any of these meetings, since I've been a part of this for the past however many years. So yeah, I need some clarity on all of this.
Oh,
But I don't want this to hold up on us going through this agenda today.
all right.
So if it's something that we can address later on, that's fine. It may not be deemed a priority, so we can move forward on this, but yeah.
Except I would love for you to be here as a member, but we have been getting more strict about compliance with the Brown Act, and especially the changes from last year that were included as AB 2449. And so this is a learning curve for all of us here. Benjamin Scott wants to say something about this, and I'm going to let anybody talk about this. I recognize Ben.
Just a point of information, and I guess my answer is actually here. Was he here last meeting?
I was there at the last meeting. Yes, I've been at the most recent meetings, Benjamin. I don't know if you were there, but I was here and I voted as well too. And so in response again to this stipulation or whatever the legalese behind it, or whatever the case may be, I have had a recent disability. And so I am still currently on housebound requirements from my physician. So I'm not able to attend most of my even work meetings physically, or indefinitely not something of this committee as well too. So there are special cases I'm sure we all have as well too. So it's not just a singular thing that I think we can all, agree that we can always be there in one accord at these meetings.
Okay.
But we're here as best we can.
Okay, Yusef, let me.
But again, we can move forward on this. We don't have to discuss the whole meeting requirement for this.
To chime in on this.
Okay, so in keeping with the agenda, I would
Yeah.
like if we could move item 2 below item 5. So item 2 is the approval of the meeting agenda, which we're kind of in right now. And that would allow us to have the discussion of AB 2449 and maybe provide some clarity and then do that.
Well,
Because we're kind of having that discussion now.
we are having that discussion now, but we're having that discussion about a roll call and who is in attendance. So I'm willing to move, approve item number 2, which would, farther in the meeting, but I can't move it ahead of roll call. So,
So again, point of information. Sorry, I thought we discussed this at length in the last meeting.
well,
No.
we didn't discuss this particular point.
We did, that's why I'm here tonight. So I'm just wondering how long we want to belabor the meeting for this.
Okay. So,
And it was written out in the packet too.
So I'm sorry, it's just, it seems like a lot of time for something that's been discussed.
okay, well, if you'll just be patient, we'll move on to the more exciting parts of the meeting. But, okay, so at least one thing that we can do
Andrea
Yes.
Dawson has her hand up too.
is vote on whether Yusef Herbert has whether we approve of his just cause plea. And now, Jeff, do you want to say something at this time about that?
No, just a clarification that to be in attendance, you ought to have, well, my interpretation of AB 2449 is that you need to be on both audio and visual to qualify for attendance.
Okay.
Oh.
So Yusef,
Yes,
can you attend with video?
yes. And then we can move on to the next subjects of the agenda too. Yes.
Okay, can you attend right now?
Um,
Video?
Yes, I could be on video. That's easily done in a few seconds.
Okay. Well, that brings up another point regarding roll call, and that is Andrea Dawson. She did submit a just cause application that she will be in Santa Barbara at a particular address, 340 Old Mill Road in Santa Barbara. I think that one of the things that we pointed out was it's supposed to be in the agenda, and it's not in the agenda.
It is.
She did,
It is.
did she? Is
It's
it?
right above agenda. It says, note, member Dawson will be attending remotely via Zoom from 340 Old Mill Road, Santa Barbara, California, 93110.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, that is, is this the agenda that was posted?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great, very good. Glad to hear it. So let's take a vote on whether Andrea is in attendance. Okay.
She's in the
Okay, you can hear me too. I'll
Yeah.
leave my, yes. Okay,
So I believe that we're supposed to vote whether we approve the just cause. Correct?
That, I have no experience with that. When the Peralta Board of Trustees attend remotely, there is no such vote.
Oh, there's no such
There's
thing.
no such
Okay. All right, well,
I bet you that approval might only need to be if it's an emergency situation. Otherwise, I think you just need, I don't want to be giving legal advice, but we're all sitting
give
here.
your opinion.
But I believe that you could just say, my just cause is, and that will be
That's all
enough
that's
of it.
required.
Yeah, to say that it's noted one of the 4 causes.
Very
Oh.
good. That satisfies me. Andrea, do you want to say something?
yeah, and I think I know AB 2449 pretty well, and we have not been complying. I'll say that number 1. Number 2, I will say that you can decide this evening for Yusef to attend under emergency, that he has actually asked for that at the meeting, and you take a vote and you agree that he can attend as under that clause, okay? So, but I believe you have to use the emergency versus just cause. There's two causes that you choose. So you say this was an emergency, and you cannot attend in person, and then you will be a voting member this evening, okay? So that's how it works. But we all have to be on camera and available to speak at all times. You cannot go in and out, or it actually says in AB 2449 and the Brown Act that the meeting needs to stop and reconvene after that person comes back on camera. You also have to keep a quorum in the room the whole time. Somebody can't leave the room, or you actually have to take a recess when there's a minimum quorum in the room.
Well, thank you, Andrea. That makes a lot of sense. So that's the way we should do it. And if there's no further comments, we agree there that Andrea Dawson and Yusuf Herbert are in attendance as committee members.
I think we need to take a vote for Yusuf, to just the recognition of the emergency, and
Okay,
which I will make the motion to speed this thing along. I make a motion that we accept Yusuf Herbert's emergency reason for attending remotely.
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye. Great, okay.
It was unanimous.
Unanimous. Okay, so basically we are trying to improve our administrative and parliamentary procedures here. And so it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for all of us. Okay. Jeff, do you still want to move item number 5 before approval of the minutes from the last meeting?
So I think I would, only to make sure that we have a clarification that the minutes that we have from last meeting need to be supplemented to reflect the information that we're now including in all of our meetings.
Well, that is not what we covered last meeting. So the minutes from last meeting are supposed to reflect what we actually talked about last meeting. And I thought that the minutes were accurate.
So let me clarify. It has to do only with the designation of whether a person was here remotely or was in compliance with all the regulations that we just talked about. I think we had decided that on July 1, we were going to be complying as strictly as we could with the provisions of AB 22449.
Yeah.
And so if we are, then I think we need to go back and review the attendance and how it was attended and the actions that we took to make sure that we were in compliance with the law that was in effect at the time we had that meeting.
Actually, better information.
Yes, Benjamin.
So if that's the case, to my understanding is that last meeting was a clarification meeting because I was not on camera. So if I wasn't on camera and then my attendance wasn't acceptable in arrears now, then that means the whole meeting is off because that means every vote we took has to be redone. So I'm sorry, I'm going to be blunt. I think we're getting carried away. I think there's a spirit and then there's a letter. I think we have honored the spirit. I think everybody's clear. I'm here tonight. As you can tell, I dressed up really nice to be here. I'm busy. I'm moving. I dropped my moving to be here to be in compliance. So clearly, I didn't know last meeting, and I definitely know this meeting because I'm here in the flesh, not showered, not dressed up, anything to be in compliance. So I'm sorry, but I'm getting a little bit frustrated that we're spending now like almost 20 minutes on who's here and who's not. When we're all clearly here, and we're trying to overcome from COVID till now which lasted about 3 years. So if we weren't 100% in compliance, then this meeting is gonna go till like 9 or 10, because we have to redo the meeting. Because I wasn't in compliance last meeting, because I wasn't on camera.
Okay. With that said, I'm not going to change the agenda items. We are going to, right now, do the agenda item number 2 as it is written. The question is, did the minutes that are published accurately reflect what happened last meeting?
First is agenda item number 2. You're looking for an approval of the meeting agenda.
Oh, agenda, okay.
Yeah, and
yes.
then number 3 is approval of the minutes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you for, okay, so this is the approval of this meeting's agenda.
Chair
Are there
Crawley
any-
is looking for a motion to approve.
I'm looking for a motion to approve the, okay,
Second.
fine. Everyone in favor of this agenda?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously.
Okay, without objection, this agenda is approved. Okay. Item number 3, the minutes from our July the 12th meeting. Question is, do the minutes as they're written accurately reflect what happened at that meeting? Okay, looking for a motion to approve them.
I'm for this one.
What's that?
I so moved.
Okay,
Go ahead and
second,
Second.
okay. Everyone that is in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
I
Aye,
Abstention.
okay.
And I am abstaining also.
Okay, Andrea. How about you, Youssef?
He said aye.
Oh,
Aye.
I didn't hear that. Thank
You
you.
might want to do roll call just to make sure we get
Yeah.
accurately.
So I had ayes from Jill, Benjamin, Marcus, Youssef, and abstentions from Andrea and Jeff.
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any public people that want to comment right now? Or is there anybody here that wants to comment on a non-agenda item? Hearing none? So moved.
None on Zoom.
Okay. Now we're at agenda item number 5. Should we ask for legal advice about AB 2449? First, I'd like to explain that I sought out an opinion about this. I called up Anton Youngher, who is the founder of California Association of Bond Oversight Committees. This association, their purpose is to help members of CBOCs to have a more effective CBOC. That's the only thing they want to do is have better CBOCs. So I called him up and I said, Anton, I'd like to talk to you about this AB 2449. And he says, isn't that the one where they changed the Brown Act after the COVID thing last year? I said, yes, that is right. And he says, and it's part of the Brown Act, right? I said, yeah, that's right. It has amendments to the Brown Act. And he says, well, here's my opinion. Most people in California agree that the Brown Act applies to citizens bond oversight committees. Says, therefore, if it applies, all of it applies, including AB 2449. Now, there are a couple of people that are outspoken in California that says the Brown Act does not apply to CBOCs. And those couple of people are generally considered kooks. So Marcus, do you agree with almost everybody or a couple of kooks? And I said, well, putting it that way, I agree that the Brown Act in all of its glory applies to the CBOC. So, so the way I understood the problem is that, do we want to get a lawyer's opinion about whether AB 2449 applies to the Citizen Bond Oversight Committees? And I say, we don't need a lawyer's opinion because I agree that it applies. That's what I have to say about it. Who wants to say something else about whether or not 2449 applies to Citizens Bond Oversight Committees? Okay.
I concur.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Okay, hearing none.
Well, no, I want to just say, yeah.
Sandra.
So, yeah, I concur too, and it applied last month also, and I think we attempted to be quite clear about that. So I would like a clarification from the district's legal counsel of what the actions we took last month were legal or not. So I feel like we don't need them to come to us to a meeting. They just need to write it out and send it, and it be presented at the next meeting. I don't want to belabor it more than that, but we still do not have clarity on that.
Oh, okay.
Information.
Ben,
I'm going to disagree.
with
There
Andrea?
was,
or-
yes,
Okay.
because it goes back to us approving the minutes again. So basically, we're bringing this back up again. So I thought we just voted on that. So my understanding is prior to any meetings before that, there was no clarity about attendance. Last meeting, there was a clarification meeting, in my opinion, about what constituted attendance. So if you're trying to say that the day of the clarification, if we didn't meet those objectives, then the meeting doesn't count or the attendance doesn't count, that's not fair. So I don't know why we need a legal opinion. I don't know who made the decision. He wasn't the chair, I wasn't the chair. There was no, in my opinion, I'm only one vote, there was no clarification meeting about what constituted attendance until the last meeting. So if you're trying to say at that meeting, if you didn't meet those requirements, that's not constituting attendance, that is not fair. So if you're now asking for a legal opinion about that, I think it's a waste of time and I think it's highly unfair.
Okay. Is that all?
That's like saying, let's have a meeting about like
No.
whether or not you got in trouble about something you just found out, you may or may not have been able to do that or not in that moment.
Okay.
That's in arrears. So based on the meeting last week, this week, we're being very strict about attendance, but we weren't last meeting because we didn't have the clarification. So starting today, we have the clarification and we've made those adjustments and we are now moving forward. I don't know why we're belaboring something that is not helping this district or the construction of the district. That is our job, not whether or not we were in compliance with attendance or not.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I feel very strong about this.
Okay.
There's time to spend on certain things. This is not one of them.
All right, you've made your point. I hear it and I don't disagree with it. Is there anybody else?
Yes, I do. I'm gonna have to piggyback what Benjamin just said because I didn't know that we were even addressing this in the depth by which we have. And it seems that all the time when we are having these erroneous things that come up, it takes away from the new business and also the speakers who attend. And so if we need a point of clarification just to get this over and done with and sealed and finally adjourned upon, then maybe that's something that like Andrea mentioned, that the lawyer can just send tomorrow, he can just put it in and it's done. But to go into a whole night of this is a complete waste of everybody's time. And I think we need to just settle this real quick and move on to the next agenda items to not waste anyone else's time.
Thank you.
So yes, I'm not done yet. I would like to continue to have the lawyer do that, and that's fine. We can get the attorney's response, and then let's move on. Let's just move on to the next agenda.
Okay.
Countering.
Now, Jill, do you have something to say about
Well,
this?
I mean, again, I'm new to this, but I will just say that if we knew what the rules were and the parameters were of AB 2449 at last meeting, and if there was a compelling desire to meet all that, then that should have been noticed at the beginning of that meeting, and we should have made adjustments to the voting and everything else that was discussed at that meeting. We didn't do that. Like Ben said, it was something that we were still ironing out and making sure everybody was on the same page at this meeting. So I am not in favor of going back and potentially undoing everything. I would like to move forward from this meeting on with a precise, understanding of what the requirements are if you should not be able to attend in person.
Okay. Ben,
So-
would you have something else to say?
I just want to say, in all fairness, I think this is difficult for all of us, either pro or con, whatever you want to put it, because we're coming out of an unprecedented situation that hasn't happened since the early 20th century, when we had smallpox and all this stuff, where we had similar things. None of us is alive for that, not even our grandparents were alive for it. So this is an unprecedented situation where we were able to suspend the Brown Act, do what we needed to do with Zoom, and now we're going back to what was originally there. I'm sorry, but it's always kind of messy. It's messy to go there, it's messy to come out of it. And it's not going to be precise. But I think today, or last meeting, we made the precision, and this week we're on course. I don't know why we're revisiting something where we were told what the rules were the last meeting, and you can't say that you had to be in compliance at that meeting when you're making the clarification at that meeting.
Yeah, I agree.
Are there any other comments from
Andrea,
from committee members? And
Andrea,
we've already heard.
Andrea has her hand raised.
Something
wait a minute. I want to say something. So I want to move on too. All I'm asking for is a legal clarification. So because we need more clarification of exactly what needs to be in the agenda, how it needs to be posted, what constitutes an emergency, and when you can vote on that. And so I think if we just got a legal counsel of the district, which I asked for last month, to clarity on AB 2449 and how we are supposed to conduct our meetings. That's all I ask for. And I want to move on too. Okay.
There a second.
Andrea, thank you. Okay, so this is, yeah,
Yeah, so I'm looking for a much narrower discussion, and that is simply that a knowledgeable attorney, I'm assuming it's going to be from the district, review what we did at the last meeting and give us an opinion whether it did or did not comply. The law is still the law, whether we know it or not, and we are obligated to comply.
okay.
And I just want a legal opinion from somebody that says that either did or did not comply, and then we can vote to move on if we want to.
Okay, so everybody has chimed in on this. The agenda item is an action item. Should we ask for legal advice about AB 2449? So I'm going to take a vote now, and you can either vote yes or no. And if you don't like the question, you can suggest a different agenda item in the future. So right
Point
now,
of clarification.
yes,
Number 5 is just asking about legal advice for AB 2449. So if that is exactly what it is, then to me, I'm seeing that as like a one-sheet guideline of like how meetings should be conducted.
I don't quite understand your point.
We have 2 members basically saying that they want a legal opinion based on the meeting last month.
Yes,
This is asking for legal advice on AB 2449.
two different things.
Two different things. I'm in favor of, sure, a guideline, number 5. The position of the other 2 members is something different.
Yes. So we're going to vote right now on this question. And that is, should we ask for legal advice about AB 2449 in the future? We can't ask for it now. We're going to, should we do it in the future? So, okay, Ben.
It's my understanding that AB 2449, isn't that what Andrea just discussed? Am I wrong?
What she discussed was something similar but different.
I'm so confused, because I
So-
thought it already spells out in here how the meetings are supposed to be conducted. So why are we asking for legal opinion?
Andrea, we can ask her. She's right here.
It's just like,
What's the
honestly,
So the
A-
question is,
AB,
should we ask for legal advice about AB 2449? Simply yes or no. And if you think that we don't need it, the answer is no. If you think that we do need legal advice about AB 2449, the answer is yes. Shall we vote?
And just one comment. So by doing that, it gives us the opportunity to ask more technical questions or individual questions or concerns about compliance. So just in favor of having another point in having somebody talk about it.
Okay, so do I hear no, Mark, am I supposed to ask for a vote right now, or do I ask for a motion?
You ask for a motion.
Okay,
It
I
has
ask
to be
for a motion.
moved and seconded, and then we put it out for a vote.
Okay, I ask for a motion. Now, since this is a question, what's the motion going to be? So maybe I should just phrase this in as far as a statement. Okay. So the statement is, we should ask for legal advice about AB 2449. Correct, Mark?
Sure.
Okay. Ben?
No.
Wait, we don't have a second. Wait, hold it. That's not, that was a,
Ben, do
I
you?
thought you seconded.
no. Can it,
Do I hear a
Somebody
motion?
has
So
to
you're,
second it.
so you're looking for a motion that the committee should ask for legal advice about AB 2449.
You have to have a second from someone.
that's in the affirmative. Should we? Yes, I will second it. That's,
Well, there
sorry,
needs-
I got confused.
There needs to be a motion and then the second.
He made the motion, he seconded.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Marcus made the motion, Jeff seconded.
So I vote no, that we should not have legal advice about AB 2449. Jill?
No. No.
No,
Ben?
no.
Youssef?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Andrea?
yes,
Okay, we had the vote. The vote is 4-2. We should not ask for legal advice about AB 2449. Okay. Item number 6. Measure A update. I'll refresh our memory that last meeting, I questioned why is Measure A still on the books after all these years? It was back in 2006 that the voters approved it. It seems to me that all the funds would have been used up. So, Mr. Olson, will you address that concern of mine?
I have I put together a short presentation that gets at some of the a broader picture here that I think I can go through in 5 or 10 minutes, but the basic answer is that there's the Measure A bonds were authorized for certain purposes. The district has labeled certain projects as Measure A projects, and not all those projects are completed. I think we are, as we're moving forward with the program, we're moving toward a different type of model, what I think of as a program funding model rather than a project funding model, where we'd be able to switch projects back and forth a little bit more easily. But there's some, some lag time in moving forward and getting transition to the new system. I think that's the basic answer. The theory is that
Give us a couple of examples of Measure A projects that are still ongoing.
Did you want to share the slides, Dave, or do you want me to share the slides for you?
I think the first question can be answered before the slides, and then I'm happy to walk through the slides. But I think they're for Etheria or Sharon.
Yeah, I don't want to rain on your parade, but I'm more interested in asking particular questions and getting my questions answered, and I don't know about the other members. Let's just start with the Q&A there.
Okay. So the first answer is because they're not all Measure A projects are complete.
For example, which projects, Measure A projects, are still ongoing?
Etheria or Sharon?
Sure, I can answer that. All of them. We have the auto diesel at COA. We have the Laney Library. We have the Melvia Street that has not even started, but it's been demoed. All of our capital projects that are, we have the CDC up at Merritt. We have the horticulture going on. All of those projects are in some varying form of approval, construction, or demo. So it has been a long process. COVID, DSA approvals, there are a lot of things that have contributed to the delays of those projects. Sharon, do you want to answer? Do you want to add anything to that?
So other projects include College of Alameda, the aviation project, and all of these projects are partially funded by Measure A. So that's why those projects have not been completed. And Measure G is also funding those same exact projects. Does that help resolve some of the issues? Those projects that Etheria shared with you are not fully funded by Measure A alone. They are partially funded.
I think it probably would be helpful if Dave Olson has an opportunity.
Sharon and Athenia?
Yes.
Etheria,
okay.
Yep.
I'm going to recognize any of our members' hands that shoot up so that they can ask a question while it's still relevant and before they forget it.
Great, thank you.
And if when you say something like the horticulture, if somebody is particularly interested in that and they shoot up their hand, we are going to answer about horticulture and not try to circle back to that after all the bases have been touched on. So Andrea, you have a question?
Well, mine was more general in nature. And it's a further explanation from Dave Olson and Etheria Smith on and Sharon Serrano on if this is typical or is this just special to Peralta Community College District that you would be funding projects from more than one bond measure? Or is it typical in other community college districts and K-12 districts that the funding comes from different bond measures and is commingled into one project?
I'll give that I work with a lot of districts, and it's very typical for projects to overlap between authorizations. Oftentimes a new bond measure will state specifically in the bond project list completion of projects begun with prior measures proceeds. So that's very, very common. I think that's where we'd like to move things more and more.
I have a similar question, and that is if Measure A had a project, I would think the prudent approach to a Measure A project is all the funding is at hand for that project. And that one wouldn't launch into the project with only with less than the funding to do the entire project. So therefore, why is Measure G funds lapping over a Measure A project? And in particular, horticulture, it seemed like they're just breaking ground on that. So why is that being paid for by Measure A if it indeed was a Measure A project? Why wasn't it started 15 years ago and well done by now? And why is it need Measure G funds to complete?
Sharon, do you want to go ahead and take that?
Sure. In some instances, projects may have started in one bond measure, and there was a requirement for state funding. Maybe state funding at that point in time wasn't available for whatever reason. And I'm talking about state bond funds, right? Not the local bond funds that we're discussing currently with Measure A and Measure G. And with that in mind, for example, say NCLA. NCLA started in Measure A, we completed it in this run because Measure A's last tranche was sold recently. Right? The last tranche, which was 65 million, 15 million of it went to NCLA at College of Alameda. And in regards to other projects, which they started in Measure A, the state funding may not have been available at that point in time because they ran out of that state funding, where we said Measure A was going to be allocated to this bond measure, inclusive of Measure G. So we start with Measure A funding that was allocated for that project. And then when that fund is completed or expended, let's just choose that word, we would start using Measure G at that point, which Etheria shared auto diesel, aviation, the locker project at Laney, CDC at Merritt, Hort at Merritt, and for College of Alameda, it would be also inclusive of the auto diesel project.
Well, circling back to the library project, which
LRC.
Not sure exactly what the library project consists of, but apparently it was a Measure A project. And you're saying that Measure A funds were not adequate to start to do the entire liberal library project? Or are you saying that that you got started with inadequate funds and you hoped that the state would give you more state bond funds to finish the project? I just don't understand how that, let's say, library project got started without adequate funds to complete.
No, that's not correct. None of our projects that we have embarked on at this point, we have secured funds for all of them. So in our bond program, we have program 1 and we have phase 2. For phase 1, those are the projects that have state funding, and we launched because that enables the district to leverage the bond funds to go further. So all those projects that are now in construction or in some varying phase of going forward, that's phase 1. Those projects we have money in Measure A and Measure G to complete them. We are waiting to complete those projects and have assurances on all of expenses going forward before we launch into new projects. So no, we do not start any projects in the district without knowing that we have the secured funds.
Well, then the Measure A program has the very same projects that Measure G program has. Is that correct? Or is it just that the wording of the program is so vague that we can't tell what is exactly in Measure A or Measure G?
No, that's duplication. And it's named in both bonds just because of the delay of state matching state funds. Now, if we did not accept the state funds and turn $80 million back to the state, then that comes all completely out of the district.
Okay, well, I'm not completely satisfied yet. Are there any other members that have questions about this before we have the slideshow? And by the way, are there any members that have any comments about my questioning, whether you think that I'm on the wrong track here or the right track about questioning these? Okay, hearing nothing.
Yeah. Excuse me, Mr. Cawley. I don't think it's a right or wrong track. I just think it's a matter of sharing information so that everybody is clear on how we're proceeding, how we're going forward with some of the projects. I don't think there's right or wrong. I think that, it is a clarification and things just need to be explained so that everybody in the room understands all the precautions, all the work that goes into these projects. And yes, you have your questions and you're asking, why wasn't Measure A or spent first? Because the projects weren't underway. These projects, it takes 3 years for them to even get approved for the state. So it takes quite a bit of time. When we do the facilities master plan, those projects are named in the facilities master plan because those are the things that the colleges, the stakeholders have asked for. So I hope that I just wanted to support all questions are welcome. We just want to make sure everyone understands as we're going forward.
Thank you. Ben, did you have a comment?
I have a question,
Okay.
just for my own education. So is there, for lack of, I'm not going to be, what's the word for it? Super eloquent, so I apologize. But my question is there room in the language of the bond measure when they're passed for these changes and eventualities? If we're here to represent the voters and to look after the money, I haven't read the bond language, which I probably should. But does the bond measures themselves allow for flexibility within how the money is spent and when? And whether or not other monies can be conjoined? I'm just curious.
I think Dave, you might be able to answer
Sure.
that.
The flexibility is built into the language of the bonds rather than the concept that rather than there being a concept that the projects can be changed. So the 2006 Measure A has an 8-page bond project list that's right on the district's website that you can review. It has the bond amount, $390 million, and it lists projects that certainly would cost more than $390 million, and says we will do as many of these as we can get done over time. Obviously, when you pass a bond in 2006, you're spending money at least through 2014, 2016. In our case, we're still spending that money, so it's hard to tell exactly how much those projects will cost over time or which ones are going to be priorities. But they're generally a broader list of projects on the bond project list than can be done with the amount of funding that's secured, and the district goes forward and gets through as many of those projects as it can.
Okay.
Did that answer the question?
Yes.
Dave, would you start your slideshow? I'm looking for enough certainty so that if somebody asked me this question, I could answer them. Rather than shrug my shoulders or just keep talking. So that's what I'm looking for, the certainty from you, the facts that give me certainty.
Okay. Am I shared here?
Yes, you are.
All right, fantastic. Let's see. So the first, let's move on, next slide. I'm not sure where my screen is. Do I just move forward like this? Does that move it forward?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're seeing slide 2 now.
Okay, fantastic. So what is the bond program? Again, this is a kind of more of a broader context for the issue. And if it's not answering your question, Mr. Crowley, I'm happy to get back to it. But you know, when we think of a bond program, what we're talking about is the coordinated effort to plan for and complete capital projects, including getting the funding for it. So there are needs in the district that are, you know, ongoing. It's, you know, the district has a physical plant that's worth in the billions of dollars, and obviously repair and renovation and new projects are always going to be coming up. So there's always capital improvements to be done. In California, those are usually funded with bond dollars. Some state matching funds can come in. They're usually attached as a matching to state bond dollars. I mean, to local bond dollars. We also know that bonds have a good passage rate for community college districts in the Bay Area, especially. And so we try to build a balanced program from a long-term perspective. So we're, you know, when we're modeling out our bond programs, we're including 20 years worth of expenditures, sometimes estimated with just by a burn rate, and bonds, future bond elections that are to be held. So that's kind of the first point. What are we talking about with a bond measure? Second thing I wanted to mention is what's our role, the FA in the project, and kind of as a very basic level, we're making sure that there's enough funding to do the projects that are coming, that are going to need to be funded over the next 2 years. And we're trying to put those transactions together in a way that save taxpayer money. But we're also trying to do a couple other things. And that's, again, getting back to this long-term vision. We want to structure each of the bond issues so that we can access money 2 years from now and 4 years from now and 6 years from now within the targets, the cost targets, the tax rate targets that were set at the time of issuance. We want to make the sizing and timing decisions for each issue in such a way that we're not constrained as we move into the future. Then we do, you know, all sorts of bond program management activities, including doing something like this to share additional information. One of the things that I mentioned in my first answer is that, and I think we're getting at, and you know, these overlapping projects are an example of that, is moving into a program funding mindset rather than a project funding mindset. So a project funding would list, right, 2006 Measure A would list 8 projects. And we move through those 8 projects at a time. Maybe we issue 8 series of bonds, 1 for each project. That's not how we're looking at this program, in part because the elections are held every 8 to 10 years, 6, 8, 10 years, and you don't know how costs are going to change during that period. You don't know how different needs are going to emerge. So there needs to be some flexibility in the program. So in a program funding model, each bond measure provides funds necessary to continue the ongoing program that includes both identified projects and recognition that new needs are going to emerge. So there's some flexibility in this bond language. And as we do each series of bonds, we're just doing that to fund the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years worth of expenditures. And so it's not going to fund we're not saying Series A is for Project X, right? We're saying Series A covers the cost over the next 2 years. If Project X is funded over a 4 or 5 year period, that's getting funded through 2 or more series of bonds. So it's a, you know, a more holistic approach is what we're moving towards. So we're going to worry less about encumbrances, more about cash. We're going to start new projects without having the money in the bank to finish the projects, but knowing that the money has been authorized and that we can issue new bonds to backfill into that to fund the out years of that projects as we move. We're going to want to get new authorizations right before, so the project doesn't, so the program continues without interruption.
Okay.
Yes.
You just said okay. Never mind. I lost my train of thought there. Go ahead.
Okay, and another thing that I think we hear at the board level, right, is if you're looking at a program that's going to fund, you know, $2 billion worth of projects over the next 20 years, some of those projects you just don't know what they're going to be, but you know that if you have a physical plant the size that the district does, and you're running an educational program where the needs are changing, that there are going to be needs out there. So we don't think about canceling projects when there's cost overruns. We think about, you know, kind of moving to an unfunded list. So that's the type of thinking that we're trying to move on to in the program. So you're getting a sense that there's more flexibility in terms of defining what the projects are, you know, what projects are funded along the way. You know, as we're kind of moving through things, that we're not spending money as quickly as we thought we might. I think we're moving more and more toward that. But some of the hurdles are listed on this page, you know, including the kind of the encumbrance idea, the idea that, you know, that we don't have enough money, even though we have cash in the bank. As long as we have cash in the bank and we have authorization to sell in the future, we should be moving more toward the projects. And we're getting more used to that, I think, as we move through.
Dave, how can you have authorization to spend funds if you don't actually have the funds?
Because we've got the authority to issue bonds from the public, and we know we're always going to be able to issue those bonds.
So, but the voters have approved a bond, and therefore you have the fund, right? I mean,
well, you don't have what I'm saying is we don't have the fund, we don't have the cash on hand, the funds on hand until we issue the bonds. But once we've got the authorization from the voters, we're going to be able to get that that cash, and that's why we want to move forward with projects, even if, right, even if the amount that we have in the bank isn't sufficient to fund those projects over, you know, to fund that project through completion, which may be 3 or 4 years from now. The tax law involved in
Dave, you can issue more bonds within just a few months, right? So it's so the authorization to sell bonds is practically like money in the bank.
Yes, yes, and that's how we want to be thinking of it as we move through this program. So, and we also, right, that's also why we want to get more authorization before we're, you know, at the end of a new program, or before we've spent through all of the old authorization, because we want to move through without interruption. And you look at this spending list here, and these are, you know, expenditures taken from the 311A reports. And what you see is we want to be moving to a program that's spending money at about $100 million a year. And we're not there. We're at about the pace that we've been going in the past, of about 25 million a year. And something to point out, as Measure A ended, right? And we're trying to get trying to make sure that the last dollar is spent at the same time as the last project is finished, which we can do a little bit, you know, before we had Measure G passed, we didn't have the excess funds. And you can see the annual expenditures moving into Measure G went from, 30 and $40 million a year to 13, 14 million dollars a year. We slowed the program in a district that has a lot of needs because we hadn't secured that funding. Now that we've secured the funding, we ought to be moving full speed ahead on some of these projects and not worry so much, like you talked about, not worry so much about the cash we've borrowed as the funding we've secured. Does that make sense?
Everything you said makes sense. I'll have to digest it to have good questions.
Okay, so yeah, so I think that doesn't specifically address your question about why we still have Measure A funds specifically, but it gets at some of the things, some of the challenges in spending the last of the Measure A dollars. Before Measure G was passed, we were really trying to hit a soft landing where we wouldn't run out of money, where we wouldn't run out of money before we ran out of projects, right? Once Prop G is passed, we're trying to move a little faster and a little bit more flexibly. And the theory has been looking at the overlap between projects and projects that can be funded with both Measure A and Measure G money so that we spend that down. But, as we kind of get the hang of running a program with the program funding model in mind, we're going to be doing a lot more first in, first out type of funding of these projects. And we're not going to worry so much whether something's a Measure A project or a Measure G project. We're going to design the program to completely overlap.
So Dave, last week, AECom gave us a great presentation on the ongoing projects. And they have some kind of chart with a line showing when they were planning and when they got approved and when they were submitted to the state architect and things like that. Is there a chart like that covers Measure A and extends on into Measure G, so we could have some kind of graphic assist on particular projects?
I don't have that, and I don't know that Sharon has that. When we're doing what I can say is when we're doing our planning on this, we are planning as if it's a single pot. From the finance side, we're planning as if it's a single pot of money, and that we are going to be able to find enough overlapping projects to spend through Measure A, in the next year or so. So I think going backwards, I'm not exactly sure what we take a look at. I can look at some of the old CBOC route or some of the old bond audits that separate it by Measure A and Measure G and show the expenditures. But I don't have anything that combines a backward look and a forward look.
Okay. Well, to a large degree, you have answered my questions. I'm going to let anybody else ask any questions that they want to. My original concern was that Measure A funds would get sort of spent down to where there's only 10 or 20 million dollars left, and then that becomes the slush fund because nobody's paying attention to that anymore. So that was my concern. So
I think what we want to do is we want to have more and more explicit overlap between the authorizations, so projects are not defined as Measure A versus Measure G, but some projects are acknowledged to be both Measure A and Measure G, and Measure X, Measure Y, Measure Z out into the future.
Yes, Dave, that you said it well, and thank you. Is there anybody that wants to make any comments or questions before we move on to the next agenda item? Yes, Andrea.
Yeah, so I just wanted to understand a question or a comment that you had, Marcus. You said it becomes a slush fund. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that the funds are small enough that nobody pays attention to them, and then they get spent without good accountability. That's what I mean.
Okay, so I could ask if the district does what I call as go back projects with those smaller amounts, and that's sometimes why we leave a measure, a bond measure open, say with $10 million in it, because maybe windows in a particular facility were stated in a certain way in Measure A, say, but they weren't captured in Measure G. And so you can do what's called a go back project on a particular campus site and you still use that funding. So sometimes that's how it's actually taken up, I believe. And so you can call it a slush fund, but really it's earmarked for things that end up necessary on the original projects that were started that weren't quite captured in the scope.
Okay, so I can respond to that, and Dave and Sharon, feel free. So we do not have a slush fund. We are always being audited internally and externally. And also Measure A is more restrictive than Measure G. Our Measure A is we cannot do repairs. Measure G, we can. So Measure A will be spent first because of the restrictions on it. And Measure G is far more reaching than Measure A. Dave, Sharon, do you have other comments?
The only comment I have is that all Measure A funds are allocated. There will be no slush fund. There will be no remaining amount unaccounted for that can be used for other projects.
Well, thank you. I'm sure we'll be paying attention to that. I've never seen a government yet that calls a slush fund. But we will be scrutinizing the expenditures like we're supposed to do. Okay, shall we move on to the next agenda item?
Well, excuse me, I have a quick question. Just a quick question for Dave and Sharon. Thanks for making this presentation concise. And I just wanted to know if perhaps by next meeting, we can have like perhaps phase 1 or phase 2 timeline of the projects going forward and just kind of get a better sense of what's going on down the pipe. That's simply it. That's possible.
So, Dave, are you going to respond to Yusef's comment?
I was going to ask Sharon to respond.
Yes, I can put together something for our next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Sharon's the project person, I'm the money person.
Okay.
That's how we divide it up.
Thank you, Dave. Are there
Thank
any
you.
questions or comments before we move on? Well, moving on to agenda item number 7.
I think you have to ask for public comment, if there's any public comment.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Are there any public comments regarding agenda item number 7?
No public is in the room and no hands are up on Zoom.
Thank you. Okay. So, last meeting, AECom was talking about what they spend the bond money on for things that were not on that chart. And one of the things that she said was filling potholes. And at this meeting, Dave Olson mentioned that these bond funds are supposed to be spent on capital projects. So is a pothole filling a capital project?
I should have called it a resurfacing project, but initially it was called pothole repair, but we resurfaced a section of the roadway that went around the perimeter of the campus. And that is allowable.
And
Yeah. So how small can an expenditure be and still be a capital project?
There's no set amount,
Yeah, there's no
if I
dollar
can,
amount.
no set amount.
Sorry,
Yeah.
David, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, if I can say, it has less to do with the dollar amount being spent as the useful life of the project. So
Correct.
assuming that the resurfacing is going to last, 5, 10, 15,
Yes.
25 years, it's right. That's what makes it a capital project.
So
Is that it benefits people over time, so it's worth paying for over time.
if the improvement is only going to last for 5 years, is that still a capital project?
Could be.
If it's only going to last for 4 years, is that still a capital project?
It could be.
Okay, how about 2 years? Is that a capital project?
I don't know. Let me share with you a rule of thumb. A bond project a project can be funded by the bond if you think of it this way, that you don't do this annually, or it's not repetitive and it needs maintenance. If you have to do this annually and it needs maintenance, then it is a general fund project. But if this is something that doesn't occur on a regular basis, it can be bond funded. That's just a rule of thumb. Sometimes we also have legal opinions, and we also have Dave's opinion. We meet on a regular basis and review some of our expenditures.
So Etheria,
Yes.
is there some guideline that you use to come to that conclusion?
I'm not,
Some
we
kind of published guideline.
a published guideline. We go by the bond. We go by what the bond says we can use the funds for. That's how we allocate our funds.
Oh, okay. Jeff, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to ask Dave or Etheria, does the IRS provide any guidance on the distinction at all between a capital improvement and a repair?
They don't really provide good guidance, no.
They don't, okay.
Now, in Measure A, repairs were not allowed. In Measure G, you can do major repairs.
It's like Andrea has her hand up.
Okay, Andrea, you're on mute.
thank you. So it's more of a comment. So I think if people would read the bond language and read in particular what the general uses of the bond language are, which is on the more of the latter language of it, it clearly says repairs to landscape, roadways, sidewalks, so this and paving. So it calls it repairs. And so that repair, as Etheria said, if it doesn't have to be maintained or redone every year, and even there's certain things actually that even still could fall in a bond measure program, because if it's about safety and accessibility, ADA, you need to comply, and that's why the language in the newer bond is more wide-reaching, because it does allow all that work to happen that Etheria is talking about. But I've read the language more than once.
So it sounds to me like painting a handrail every other year is a capital improvement project, according to this bond.
Yes, it could be. It's not a maintenance necessarily.
Okay, well, I think that the members of this committee are interested in what are the guidelines and what we should be expecting or not expecting regarding capital improvements. Are there any other questions or comments regarding agenda item number?
I think Dave Olson had his
Yeah,
hand up.
I was just going to make one more clarifying comment that I think this non-repetitive projects and ones that have a useful life of multi-year useful life is a good way to think of it. But I also wanted to reassure the committee that these bond issues and bond issues often have a term of 30 years on it, but the principal payments on those bonds the bonds get amortized over that useful life. So as long as there are some short-term projects, people do bond issues, fund a solar array or something like that that has a 15-year useful life, and the justification is a lot of that bond measure gets repaid in the first 15 years. So you assign that those particular bonds to the shorter life, to the project with the shorter useful life. And it's, if somebody tells you, oh, they're paying for a 15-year solar project over a 30-year bond, the person is not thinking through the logic of how the bond issue is set up.
So Dave, do you sell the bonds that are for long-term projects as a long-term project payback and short-term projects as a short-term bond?
If the bonds were, I think there's a certification that the bonds are not outstanding beyond the average useful life, that the average maturity of the bonds is not beyond the average useful life of the group of projects being funded with that bond issue. So that's a start. But if you knew that an issue was sold entirely for short-term projects, we'd amortize all those bonds over the short term. And I think you see that in a lot of school districts who have portions of their bond measure that are 5 years and in to fund purchases of technology equipment and things like that. So you do make a distinction when it's notable. I think in our cases, we funded mostly projects with a long-term useful life, and it hasn't been a very close call. But if there was a significant amount of the bond issue going toward technology or solar or a portable classroom or something like that, that we'd make adjustments for that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Thank you for that clarification.
Yes.
Are there any other questions or comments on this agenda item? Okay, then moving on.
If I could say that I am, that's the last one that I thought that you'd need my opinion on, and so I was planning on dropping off at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So moving on to agenda item number 8. And this is the annual report subcommittee. Andrea, I see that you are the chair of the subcommittee. Who else is on the subcommittee? Andrea?
I think Jeff was.
It
on.
was Jeff.
Jeff? Okay, Andrea and Jeff.
So speaking to the report, as I understood it at the last meeting, we pretty much decided what the report should be. Okay. Shortening it up, some of the language in it. And so this is still a draft. And I did not run this by Jeff during last month. I had surgery. I was out for a few weeks for surgery, and then had a very bad cold out after that, actually. But this was the bulk of the comments that I think all agreed on, is that the bond highlights need to be really really condensed, and because there's other areas where you can get way more information about each one of these projects and all the projects actually. And that's if you go to the Build Peralta website. And then the other thing that I think I had asked for and we'd all agreed on is to put the current membership of the Bond Oversight Committee. So what it was when the report was written and then what it is now.
Just one comment, we need to back up to the page before to make sure we put a P in campus.
Oh, you're so good, Jeff. Thank you.
Where was that?
Stop,
Yeah, stop. Yeah,
right there, look at near the bottom.
yeah.
Second line up from the, third line up from the bottom. Yeah, right, there you go, you got it.
Oh, every Albert Camus? No? Okay. Thank you.
And so questions or thoughts or comments on this?
Yes, Andrea, I have a comment. And that is that this annual report to the public says that the district was in compliance. When I look at the annual audit report, the annual audit report says that except as noted in findings 2022-01, and that was says that the district did not enable the proper usage of disbursement in all cases. So my question is, do we have any data on when they did not issue proper disbursements in all cases? And how is that compliance? So
well, Marcus,
let me, I'll give you the first. Do you have an answer for my question?
I
well,
have a
go
point
ahead.
of information about the question.
Okay.
Sorry. So I think this is a matter of opinion. So I'm just going to put out mine, and I don't know where direction this is going to go.
Okay.
But it's my understanding that this committee is supposed to be independent, and we're supposed to be doing this quote unquote, I don't want to say audit because that's too grand of a term for what we do, because ours, I think, is more of a bird's eye view of what's going on. I think what you're referring to is actual paid professionals that are auditing, if I'm not mistaken. And if we're truly going to be independent, then does that mean we are now trying to launch an investigation about what they said as part of our purview? Because my understanding is we are an independent public body. That is a whole separate, that is a separate body that's doing that. So I guess my question is our purview to go deep dive into that? Or based on all the meetings we've had, all the presentations we've had, all the guests we've had, all the slideshows we've had, in our opinion, as a committee, they are in compliance? Or do we even need to say that word compliant? They are in compliance, because that is a very hefty thing to say and put your name behind.
Yes, we do need.
And we don't have the investigative authority or power or resources for what whatever you're referring to has done. So I'm just putting this out there. Is this the rabbit hole we want to go down?
Your comment is well taken.
Or based on everything that I've been included, because I haven't had an issue or problem with any of the presentations we've had. So based on the information I have been given that I am privy to, my answer is yes, what Andrea is saying. But you're referring to another document that, I mean, shame on me, I haven't read, I haven't investigated, I haven't been a party to. And so are we using outside third-party sources as part of this committee?
I can answer that question.
Because that sounds to me like extra credit.
No, this is supposed to be the main document that we rely on to report to the public on whether the district is in compliance. And that's the annual financial and performance report.
Who's putting that out?
This
So
this
Ben
time,
Levitt,
it
and-
was a group called CWDL.
Is that something we're supposed to be reviewing and reading and commenting on in this meeting?
yeah, that was the presentation that Ben Levitt
That's it.
gave you earlier this year, where he went over in detail.
I understand. So in that meeting, did we question, I mean, I don't know. I was sorry, there's been so many meetings and presentations. Was there an issue with his presentation that he didn't adequately address to us in that meeting?
No,
So then how would we know about what he's referring to in that document?
well,
Because it wasn't in the presentation.
right,
So
we
like,
don't.
that's what I'm saying, is this sounds to me like a lot of extra credit. That if that's part of the purview of this body, great. If it's not, then it's not. I'm just trying to define our boundaries.
This body is supposed to report to the public annually.
But they already did.
What's that?
They already did
No, they
report to the
reported.
public.
No, they didn't.
That they reported to us on the expenditures by the district of bond funds. And we are supposed to use that along with our other observation powers to give an annual report to the public about whether the district is in compliance with the bond, the requirements of the bond program. And so here in their audit, they say they are not in compliance, and Andrea's
Can you,
annual report says they are in compliance.
well, wait a minute, can you pull up the statement from the auditor and then pull up our statement? Can you pull up the statement from the auditor that you're referring to? It needs to be posted so we can all understand what the auditor said.
That, I don't know the statement that Mr. Crawley is referring to, but this is the quote from the auditor, which is: the results of our tests indicated that in all significant respects, Peralta Community College District expended measures A and G general obligation bond funds for the year ended June 30, 2022, only for specific projects developed by the district board of trustees and approved by the voters in accordance with requirements of Proposition 39 as specified by Section 1B3C of Article 8A of the California Constitution, except as noted in finding 2022-001. So I think what Mr. Powell was referring to is maybe except as noted.
Yep, that's what he's referring to. It was part of the report, and it was, I wish we could pull that up right now, but it's insignificant to the overall dollars of the work that the district did. So there is the statement there, but it is not what, it's not an abnormal to a financial or a performance report that are required each year to be given to the Bond Oversight Committee and the district to determine if they were in compliance. And this is a requirement of the 15278, the Ed code. So if you want to say it differently, we can table this until next month, and you can bring something back, Marcus, if you want to bring it back. But I think that then everyone needs to study and reread the financial and performance audits and have an opinion, so we could come up with language that would be agreeable with everyone, because the bond spending is compliant with the law with no negative findings. So they had a variance, which is, it happens in almost every district. So if an invoice for $50,000 gets coded incorrectly and is paid, and then it deviates and needs to circle back, and that is not actually matches up 100% by the time it comes back through accounting, because there's thousands and thousands of invoices and vendor vendor contracts and consulting contracts that are done every year. And the way they do the audit, they're not going to necessarily, all you can do is ask the district to make it right after the fact. And if they do, you make the statement that they did not, there was an exception, but the district.
I understand your point.
Okay.
Do you
Ben,
want to go first? Sorry, I keep talking.
well, your hand was up first.
Well, I have two questions. Well, one's a question, one's a comment. The first question is whose eyes does that report go to? Is it just us, or is it just this committee, or does it also go to the trustees?
It goes to the trustee, to the board, and it's done, paid for by the board for our benefit. So
For this
it-
committee's
for
benefit.
this committee,
And the public hasn't seen it.
and the public has not
It
seen
has
it
not been reported.
unless they've looked online and found it online.
It's
Well,
public though.
So it's public.
It is public.
It's a public
Yes,
report.
It's
Yes.
public report.
Public document.
Okay, sorry, I just want to clarify that. And then second, if I could just add a comment. So instead of making a holistic comment, why can't we just put the word general in front of compliance? Just put it out there. They're in general compliance. They're not perfect. They're not in compliance. It's a general compliance. But we can play around with language,
Yeah.
but instead of giving a holistic stamp,
Mhm.
just put that they're in general compliance.
Okay.
Like you said,
Well-
Andrea, they're not perfect.
Okay, so we're not going to wordsmith this thing right now. I suggest that I join the annual report subcommittee. And when we have a meeting, I can talk about my points of view about this
So-
annual report.
So if I'm
Is that-
sorry, can I have another?
And, okay, good. No, Jeff,
So do we have finding 2022-001 available? And the reason why I asked the question is that, number one, this says in all significant respects, doesn't mean it's perfect, it says in all significant. So was this, and my mind is not that good to remember back about, was this a procedural problem that they weren't in compliance with? And I don't know, Marcus, maybe your memory is better than mine, was that a check was issued before somebody signed off on something, and then it was signed off, the money was spent properly, but there was a sequential error. Does that ring any bells?
so Jeff, I think you're probably right, except for the fact that my memory is probably worse than yours. And I do not recall what details came with this, but I think that if we're doing an annual report, we can easily.
If
They said.
if I can add, I do remember.
And I'm curious.
I do remember. And please check and verify, and make sure I am correct. But there was one expenditure. It has nothing to do with the bond. It was redevelopment funds were spent instead of schedule maintenance funds. So that was the issue. And it should not have been out of the redevelopment funds. It should have been out of schedule maintenance. And I believe it was for academic services to purchase software. And I think it was about, I'm not sure the exact cost, but that was the issue.
Okay, thank you. That answered one of my earlier questions.
No problem.
Okay, Jeff,
So just the theory, were those funds even bond-related funds though? I'm not sure.
No, they are not.
So how does it even, I guess the next question is, how does it even wind up in one of these audits that says that the district wasn't in compliance with the bond?
That I can't answer, but that is the discrepancy
Yeah.
that was referenced. But the other, I can't answer that.
Yeah, so I was somewhat rhetorical, I guess. All right.
Can I make a comment?
yes, please.
So this committee has one responsibility, which is to write this report. And the report has been on in the agenda for the last 3 meetings that this committee has held. And it's gone through, at this point, 3 different iterations and drafts. And I gotta say, I'm a little frustrated because we saw the audit from the external auditor, CDW. Ben Levitt gave a presentation. Mr. Crawley, you thanked Mr. Levitt for the presentation. You mentioned that you'd never seen a detailed and audit report. The finding of the audit firm was that the district is in compliance. I don't see why we need to wordsmith qualitatively about whether the district is in general compliance or not, when all of the data that this committee has been provided suggests that it is. And so I'm not sure why, we want to wordsmith this document further when it's already gone through 3 drafts and it has been reviewed by the committee. I would like to see the committee vote to approve or not.
Yeah,
Well, it is,
That's what I think too. I mean,
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
All right.
So my question, sorry,
Yeah.
Chair.
go ahead.
If the main concern is not giving a holistic stamp of approval, I'd like to go back to my original comment, which is to add a word, it could be a different word, but to say that the district is in general compliance, not just say the district is in compliance. So if that's your concern, Chair, then I think by adding another word in front of it, then perhaps we're meeting the spirit of what you want instead of joining the committee and more wordsmithing. I mean, I hate to say this, but we're heading into the following year of this.
well, I'm going to ask Jeff, I would like to ask an opinion of the committee, but in particular, Jeff Cambray, since you are an attorney, I mean, I think the word general, I mean, it's bothersome to me. I will say, I'm not sure. I think this is worded so we're telling the truth. There was this one, I mean, I think it's well worded as it is because general is too general of a remark, I guess is what I'm saying.
About
Is
significant?
well, because they were not significantly out of compliance. It was a minor.
They are in significant compliance.
They are in significant compliance. It was a
why
minor
can't you say that?
detail.
Isn't that the word they use?
Well,
No,
the
the chair has an issue with saying that they are in compliance when that is not 100% true. So if we can have sorry to say this.
But that compliance is the bond. That was general funds. That's not the bond.
Exactly. It's a very well worded statement. It leads you directly to, if you're interested in what the auditor found, you can read it. And if we want to put that in to the report, I'd be fine with that. But I think that it is so minor in the, and it's not really relative to this, to them being in compliance.
Hang on a second. Let's cut to the chase
Can I
and
make
just
another
vote
suggestion?
whether or not this is a final document or it needs some work.
Can I make a suggestion?
Okay, what's your suggestion?
Okay, Andrea doesn't want to make any changes. You're not 100, if I'm getting your sense, Chair, you're not 100% comfortable giving a 100% stamp of approval. Is it possible we could add an asterisk with this, whatever the auditor is saying right there with the 20-22-1? That we're saying they are in compliance, but there's this one little thing, and we're adding a little asterisk and we're just quoting that from the actual document.
Okay.
I'm just putting things out there.
That is another idea.
We have a lawyer here, so
Yeah, I want to be really clear. I am not the lawyer.
I don't know parliamentary, in a parliamentary procedure, whether we say, yes, we like this except for an asterisk.
but we're a board, so we can make that decision.
So.
I'm just throwing ideas out.
You know,
I would actually love to refer to the attorney on this one.
yeah, I'm not the attorney. So I'm gonna throw this out here and we can decide because I think we spent a lot of time. And I'm gonna make a motion that we accept the report as written. And somebody can give me a second.
I second.
Okay.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept this report as it is with no changes. Let's have a vote. So Andrea? You're okay. Yusuf?
Yes.
That was a yes?
Yeah, would say she raised her hand.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Marcus? No. Jill?
I'll go with yes.
Okay. And Ben?
What's your vote? Oh,
There's always abstention. You can always abstain.
No, then I prefer to abstain, change mine to abstain,
It really doesn't matter because they already have
Yeah, I
a
know.
majority.
but just because I was on here.
So do you abstain, Ben?
I'll vote yes.
Okay, you'll, yes, okay. So this is the annual report.
Wonderful.
Thank you all. I know that was excruciating.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Woo.
This is
Yeah.
always fun.
Every little word. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next agenda item, agenda 9, the website. Jeff and I have talked this over, and we would like to improve the website with a chart of the members and various columns, and these describe the columns of the website. The columns of the categories for each member of the website. And just to summarize, the members of our committee will be listed as they are listed in the education code 15278 or 280. And so the first sub number is a particular class, like the member of a business group. The second one is something else, and get on down to about number 3 or 4. It says member of a bona fide, active in a bona fide taxpayer association. So that would be listed. So just the fact that I am the chair doesn't mean I'm going to be listed first. I'm going to be listed as described by the Ed Code.
In that sequence.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
so we have the Ed Code sequence.
And that's the chart, or that's the
Yeah.
representation of the chart.
Yeah, I started to fill out based on the information that you provided. I apologize that with, this is my busiest time of the year with enrollment as the marketing guy, so I apologize I did not get a chance to actually complete this to show it off for the committee, but
All right.
there's the start on what was proposed.
Yes, okay. Yeah. So we'll fill that in. And one other website related comment. I'd like to point out that we have previously agreed that the CVOC, the BMOC website is linked with the Peralta education homepage. And I noticed that there are 2 different websites. There's the one that's linked to Build Peralta, and the one that's linked to Peralta EDU, and they're not the same. So let's get them both the same.
So what we were waiting is for this group to say, yes, we are ready to move over to Peralta.edu, and then we can complete the migration of content off of the Build Peralta site onto the Peralta.edu site, and then take down what's on the Build Peralta site.
Okay, I didn't realize that we were waiting on a decision by us.
Yeah.
Shall we make the decision right now? Okay, so shall we agree that the website will be directly accessed from the Peralta EDU homepage, and that Bill Peralta will just have a link,
Second?
okay?
Yeah, this is an information item. This isn't an action item.
Okay.
I
I think we can just say.
I think you can, just as a
I think we
collective
just
group,
say,
you just
hey,
say, Mark, do it.
Yeah, Mark,
Yeah,
do
Mark,
it.
do it, yeah. So sometimes we have to fumble our way through procedure.
Yes, understood. But I'm at the direction of the committee on the website hosting, and I'm happy to make that change for you.
Okay,
So one of the things could the chart then be incorporated into that, so the next time we see it, it actually looks
Yes.
in real time?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And does this mean it launches, or is this like the final draft? It moves over, but it's still draft?
So we haven't added to the high level navigation of the website because,
Yes,
we haven't got the authorization from the committee to actually do that. So
Right.
it's sort of security by obscurity at this point. Let's see, we can show you what we've got here. Go into Zoom.
okay,
There we are.
Yeah.
there we go.
So there we go. This is the committee homepage. We need to
Yeah,
get the
and
message
So
updated.
we don't like these little spare sentences down at the bottom. We like a menu. Okay, so I think that we're ready to move on to the next agenda item, and that is,
Ask for public comment.
okay, are there any public comments on shall the CBOC form a subcommittee
Okay, so next.
to review the bylaws?
No hands up in Zoom.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from our members regarding this? Yes, Ben?
I'm just curious what's prompting this agenda item. Is there any concerns, questions?
Well, yes, I was concerned during our last meeting because I looked up the bylaws, and they're a different set of bylaws than the previous time that I had looked them up. And when I read the bylaws, I had questions and reservations about some of the bylaws. I think that we should at least discuss our own bylaws, and we've never done that.
Sorry, where did these bylaws come from to begin with?
Andrea asked the question
I can feel
in our meeting last week, and the answer was the district's lawyer drafted the bylaws.
And so are we bound by them, or they can be?
Yes, this committee is bound by the bylaws, which were written and approved by the Board of Trustees. So the Board of Trustees created this committee and the bylaws. So, this committee could make an ask to change the bylaws, but you can't proactively change the bylaws on your own. It has to be done by the Board of Trustees of the Peralta Community College District.
So who's changing? You're saying the bylaws changed. So who's changing them?
One thing that we can do as a subcommittee is review them and decide whether or not we recommend that changes be made to the bylaws. And I think we should do that because it's at least taking some level of responsibility for our own bylaws. I have a personal point of view about this, is that I've never seen any authority for the district to impose bylaws on an independent subcommittee. So there is that question, but that is not the question that we will be directly confronting. The question will be, here is a bylaw that says this. Do we like that, or do we want to change it? And so there's about 3 pages of bylaws. And one of the bylaws that I don't particularly like, it said that the CBOC shall have approximately 4 meetings a year. Well, I think that as an independent subcommittee, we have as many meetings as we think we should have. So therefore, there's at least one of the bylaws that we're going to recommend to the board that they change. Yes, Jeff?
So I don't think there's any problem doing a general review of bylaws, no matter who generated them, just to make sure that they're still functional in post-COVID, if nothing else.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know if there'd be any changes, but I don't think there's any harm in doing a quick overview.
Okay, and since it's going to be a subcommittee, we're not going to be imposing our points of view on the public or on the people that are not interested in being on the subcommittee. We're just going to have a discussion about it and then come back to the meeting, to this full committee and say what we think. Andrea, you have a comment.
Well, I was going to say, I actually second reviewing the bylaws. I do believe that we should I don't see anything in particular on it other than what a quorum is. And so that would be my only thing that if the bylaws that are currently on the website, I question that. But I think given, that the Brown Act and the amendment AB 2449 to the Brown Act, that we should make sure that our bylaws are up to date. And if we see that they're not, or we think that they're not, we should actually make a recommendation for them to be changed after a review.
Okay, so I want to be on the bylaw subcommittee. Who else wants to be on the bylaw subcommittee? Yeah.
Does it need a subcommittee versus just a discussion, like a discussion with the group?
Well, first off, let's minimize the amount of time of this for our committee to be fussing with it. I would rather a few of us fuss with it and present it, and then we can minimize our committee fussing with it.
Yeah, bylaw changes can get messy. It may be, and take up a lot of time. So, yeah, I think I would agree that a subcommittee can waste a lot more time than we can.
So I'm trying to rush through this and meet our deadline in 4 minutes. So am I going to be on this subcommittee all by myself?
So do we need to make a motion? We're gonna establish it first?
Okay.
And I'll be happy to make that motion for you,
Okay,
Marcus.
please.
I will make a motion that we establish a subcommittee to review the current bylaws of the BMOC.
Okay, I second that motion. Shall we take a vote on having a subcommittee that reviews the bylaws?
Call it.
Okay. Jeff?
Yes.
Marcus, yes.
Yes.
Jill? Ben?
Aye.
Andrea? Okay. Yusef?
Sure.
Good. So Yusef, you going to be on the bylaw subcommittee?
Absolutely not.
Did you say absolutely?
Not.
Make that one word stand out tonight, yeah, amongst these other words.
Marcus, I will be on the committee with you, but not as an attorney.
Oh, good. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Then the subcommittee consists of Jeff and me.
How
Okay.
much is the rate of pay for that?
Oh, lots.
Oh, okay.
Lots.
And you have the website responsibility too.
That's almost done. That we're done.
Okay. So any new business that agenda items that we want on next month's meeting, which is going to be, yes?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, my apologies. You had suggested discussing schedule, meeting schedule as part of the agenda for this meeting, and I didn't get that reflected in this meeting. So I'm going to recommend that you talk about your schedule, calendaring your meeting schedule at the next meeting. And right now that we're still on a second Wednesday of the month, so the next meeting is scheduled for September. Sorry. September 13th.
Okay. So just to put some context in it, several times during the last year or two, we have agreed that we're going to have a meeting on the second Wednesday of every month. And several times it's come up that, when is our meetings? Well, it's until we change things, it's going to be the second Wednesday of every month. And so that's my point of view. So our next meeting will be second Wednesday of next month. And right now, I'm inviting any suggestions for agenda items, but you're not limited to right now. You know, you can email me anytime and I will faithfully write it down and submit it to Mark.
Mr. Chair, you're at 7:30.
Okay, thank you. If there are no final questions or comments, we are adjourned.
Right on schedule.
I don't have to
Thank
make
you.
that. We have to vote on it.
Yeah.
Just-
Thank you all so much for dialing in.
Thank you. Thank you.